Hey everybody, Art from the A to Z show here, and today we're talking about everything that you need to know about 10 Cloverfield Lane, from the Easter eggs to the connections to the theories, as well as a Cloverfield giveaway that we'll talk about at the end of the video, but of course, a major spoiler warning. So, 10 Cloverfield Lane, it's a great film that sets up so much, but in that JJ fashion leaves so much open to interpretation that you can see this movie in so many ways. One of the best parts about these films that not many people know is that you can enjoy them as standalone films, which millions of people do, but they also have this amazing viral marketing that really gets you invested into the story. You know, when you're watching a movie and you're like, I don't want it to be too convoluted, but I wonder if the filmmakers know the backstory to all of this. These movies got you covered. They have this thing called an ARG, which stands for Alternate Reality Game, which allows you to be able to follow up the events leading up to the movies, which they did for the first. They do it for the second. You can follow it online. But even in some cases, you can show up to physical locations and find things. You can check out these websites to join in on the fun, but here I want to give a quick summary on the ARG. So let's start with the first, a movie that divided audiences mainly because it was found footage, but one that many saw as an American version of Godzilla and just a simple monster movie. But boy, were they wrong. See, we start off by following the character of Rob, who just like all of the other characters, were given social media accounts that you could follow up until the days of the attack. As shown in the movie, we see that he's moving to Japan to work for a company named Slusho, a beverage that you can't drink just 6 of. But this beverage is special in that the main ingredient is seabed nectar, which can only be found in the sea. This then brings in the big boss, the ones you need to remember, Tagruato, a Japanese mining company that dates way back to 1945 because they go all out with their backstory. This company has subsidiaries like we mentioned with Slusho, Yoshida Medical Research, which deals in deep sea genetics, Parafun Wax Distributors for your everyday wax uses, and Bold Futura, which advances in technology such as satellites and plays a big part in the sequel. On April 27, 2008, as we follow the timeline, we notice at the end of Cloverfield, a portion of a Bold Futura satellite, the Chimpanzee 3, falls into the ocean. This gives the company leeway with their Hatsui satellite to collect and secure samples. To some, they believe that's a better way for them to snoop around with a better satellite that they have, while others believe that they're just cleaning up after the mess and goodwill. But that's not what Tidal Wave thinks. Yeah, even in this fictional world, you have fictional environmental activists trying to take down the fictional drilling company. There's even a side story of video messages between a missing activist named Teddy Hansen and his girlfriend Jamie, who in a video actually eats seabed nectar, and it makes her go crazy. Interestingly enough, you can connect that info with Clovey, the monster, and its Clovettes, who also had strong traces of the seabed nectar within them. Also cool to note that Jamie appears in Cloverfield passed out right here. The big thing with Tidal Wave, however, is that they find out that the Chuai station, one of the 14 drilling stations Tagruato has, is built in a part of the Atlantic that has no oil. However, we know that they built the station there because one of their employees made a major discovery and then a week later killed him, his family, and wiped all of his computers. Things get crazy when news reports come out showing a disaster that causes the destruction of the station. Knowing it has nothing to do with oil, we can assume that black figure in the water is the Cloverfield monster that then swims to Manhattan and causes the chaos, giving us the events from the first film. So yeah, there's a lot more to Cloverfield than people think, but now that we have 10 Cloverfield Lane, we start wondering, how is it going to connect, and is the ARG going to be the same and as investful as the first one was? Well, let's find out. After the surprise trailer dropped for 10 Cloverfield Lane, people started emailing Tagruato, whose website is still up, and they realized that the website was updated with a new Employee of the Month page for March, which happens to have this handsome fellow right here, and thus we knew the journey had begun. The next clue was on his shirt. When you type in radioman70.com, it then redirects you to funandprettythings.com, which Howard, John Goodman, uses to try to communicate with his daughter Megan before the events of 10 Cloverfield Lane. Since most of us have seen the movie, it's really cool to revisit this page and notice the French symbolism, such as the Eiffel Tower, knowing that the family wanted to visit France. But some have even connected it as a callback to the old fan-made sequel poster, or even to the Statue of Liberty, which came from France, and heck, even Swamp Pop bottles have a P that looks like the Eiffel Tower. We then notice an anagram with the missing letters in this picture that would spell out Megan. We know that mint ice cream in a bowl was her favorite. She liked magazines, but that she also loved Pretty in Pink. When you click on that still for the movie, it prompts you for a password, which is a quote from the film, "Do you want to talk?" This then brings you to a series of messages he writes to her, warning her of the attacks that are coming. Some of the juiciest stuff we learn is that he is living near New Orleans while his wife and daughter have moved away from him to Chicago. To some, the language that Denise, his wife, uses, such as "it's a morbid fantasy, leave me alone," and even "deep down inside, you have to know you'll never see Megan again," leads people to believe that she's actually dead and Howard just can't come to terms with it. But there's also the restraining order, which you can't really place on a dead person. The most recent message so far is from a guy initialed NR, which could be Nikolai Rosa, who is mentioned as an employee of the month for the April version of the Takarato website, and he also served in the Navy before joining Bolt Futura the same way that Howard did. His message leads to a picture when decoded that looks like one of the aliens we see towards the end of the film. Along with a survival simulator left for Megan, it was cool to see other interactions pop up. Coordinates to a ranch were discovered where a Redditor found a swamp pop bottle next to a mound where he dug up a cartridge case filled with survival gear, a USB drive with recordings from a satellite mission talking about a bright red flashing light as mentioned in the movie, but even includes the missing catfish puzzle pieces that we see in the film. Another discovery led to a locker in Chicago, which included a French lunchbox with a burner phone with text messages and a voicemail of Howard trying to contact Megan. There's even a mention of a silverware set that led people to find a Craigslist listing with a notebook with Megan's name in the picture, confirming that it was part of the ARG. This led to a whole conversation between a user and Denise, which not only led her to post in the Fun and Pretty Things blog, but some even speculated that it led her back to the bunker and that she may be the neighbor. I don't know about that one though. The ARG for 10 Cloverfield Lane definitely hints a lot at the aliens that we see in the movie, but it's more focused on the personal story of Howard, which I find to still be very important. I love the way that it mixes the online hunts as well as a physical hunt for people to go find things, but the way it also makes connections to real life events, such as a train wreck that really did happen in Chicago, the mention of a CSAT satellite, which is real and just so happens to be orbiting around the Chuai drilling station, which is fictional, which just so happens to be owned by Taguato. So now that we've caught up with everything dealing with the ARG, that may still be going, mind you, we see that this world is so much more expansive than what we just get in the movies, which is awesome, and that opens up a lot more ways for us to find Easter eggs, so let's get into them. Looking at some of the obvious ones, we see the Kelvin gas station, which we know from Super 8, but of course is also a reference to one of the relatives from JJ, which he even makes a reference to in Star Wars The Force Awakens. In that same gas station, we see a celestial sign, and even during the air ventilation scene, a Bold Futura check can be seen, which calls back to Taguato. Kind of funny to note that Bradley Cooper phones in his performance as Ben, Michelle's husband in this movie, but it was just a cool little thing that he did since he's known JJ all the way back since Alias. And it's cool to see how they pay homage to the inspirations for the film, such as the Psycho-inspired titles, what seems to be a callback to the intro of Dan Trachtenberg's Portal film, but also just a clever filmmaking. There's a lot of foreshadowing, such as the bottle of alcohol in the beginning, the catfish game which correlates with people being taken from their own will, heck, even the lighting of what seems to be Megan's potential room that is half colored in pink tells a lot about the character's state of mind depending on where they're at. The rumbles and mentions of Martians attacks, Howard's crazy theory of space worms, and even the Cannibal Airlines VHS allude to the floating chicken little looking aliens that Michelle easily defeats at the end. But hey, if aliens have died from the common cold and a computer virus, why not have poorly constructed armor that leaves them vulnerable? At least they showed a quick shot of Michelle noticing the gas combusting when it hits the flames from the bunker. But now let's get into some theories. We know that we're looking at everything from Michelle's point of view, the same way we had the camera point of view for Cloverfield, so everything we know and feel is from her perspective. On the first viewing, we see Howard as a bad guy, a guy who did have a family, but they were taken away, and after the apocalypse, they're dead either way, regardless of what happened before. At a certain point, he misses his daughter so much that he kidnaps a girl named Brittany, and then probably Breaking Bads her. Later on, he's at a gas station like we see in the beginning, and he's hunting down Michelle, who he then crashes into, takes her to the bunker, and then all of a sudden the apocalypse that he's been looking forward to happens. However, a third party happens to come in, which ruins how things are supposed to be. It's the reason why he dresses her up as Megan, treats her like a child, and can't even see her as a woman, as you see in that game that they're playing. And while that may be the most obvious walkthrough for the movie, I believe that you can also look at Howard's character as being very sympathetic and almost kind of like the Cloverfield monster. Not making a weight joke, but when you look at the Cloverfield monster, you realize that he didn't really do anything bad but attack when he was being drilled on, when they bothered him, and then he went out and this infant monster crashed the city of Manhattan. Looking back at the ARG and even within this film, Howard's a guy who's seen things, yet no one believes him. Granted, doomsday preppers are usually creepy, but when they work for a satellite company that gives them evidence and he ends up being right, it doesn't make him completely wrong. We know his family was real and they left him alone, and that he spent time prepping for a disaster. And perhaps he was rushing back when he accidentally hit Michelle and out of guilt saved her life. Let's be honest, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is a 10 out of 10. Megan, mix with that the PTSD that he has, and sure, he's not a guy you'd want to go bowling with, but that doesn't mean that he is completely evil, especially when you remember who's influencing some of what you think. This leads to the theory that Emmett is actually the bad guy, which again is just a theory considering that this movie leaves so many things open open, but I wouldn't be bringing it up if it didn't have some scary elements that really contributed to it. For example, we know he helped create the bunker and has known Howard for years, thus meaning that he knew Megan before she left for Chicago. One can assume then that the simple man who doesn't know the difference between North or South Korea kinda had a thing going on with Megan. This then explains their tension, Howard's no touching rule, and adds more to the I'm always watching you scene. It continues by explaining that he was the one who had Megan captive, perhaps without Howard's knowledge, but Howard knew something was suspicious with him, he just couldn't pinpoint it. One day Emmett sees a flashing light that makes him go, dang, this dude was right, and forces himself into the bunker and hurts his arm while doing so. It's indicated with his fresh wounds and the fact that he was at work earlier that day that injury was more recent. Emmett may have something to do with clogging the access to the air filter, but when Michelle finds the earring, he thinks on his feet and says that the picture of the real Megan is actually just a made-up chick named Brittany to turn her against Howard. It would explain why Howard, who really loves his daughter Megan, wouldn't have real pictures of her, and also go along with the track that's actually playing titled Message from Megan from the OST. Even in the original script titled The Cellar, where he was called Nate, he was a bit more serious and had this bad guy persona be much more relevant, with Howard's character having an ending that made you sympathize with him a bit more. Some may question, well, why was he so nice in the bunker? Because there was freaking aliens outside. Of course, the movie leaves it all open for you to decipher whether you're going with the Howard is the bad guy, maybe Emmett is the bad guy, but let's just move on to the next thing, which is how much of a sequel or blood relative this movie actually is. And so far, almost as much as Howard getting out alive from that bunker. See, if you're like me and follow Bad Robot, you know that they initially acquired a spec script originally titled The Cellar, which had almost everything except the aliens. They hired Damien Chazelle to do some rewrites, and he was going to direct, but then he left to make Whiplash, which was a good idea. Thus, JJ liked Trachtenberg's use of lens flares, hired him to direct, and filmed under the title Valencia, which referenced a deleted scene where John Goodman uses the word. But the use of the word blood relative and not just saying straight up that it's an anthology is what confuses me. We know it's clear that the first movie takes place in 2008 and this one takes place in 2016, and there's no connections between the two. If you're still grasping at straws, here's what the director had to say.
They're on a separate timeline. They are not, so they are... That timeline did not happen for these characters.
So that should confirm it as an anthology series, sort of like VHS or American Horror Story, and that should be cool, right? Well, the big problem that I have with it is that it invests you so much in the first movie's lore, so then go, yeah, none of that matters. Here's the same companies, but it's a different background. And are they going to do the same thing with the third? It ends up erasing everything, and it sort of becomes worse than a comic book, also telling you don't get too invested with all these things that we create. It's also confusing to see what would classify as a Cloverfield movie with its themes because, well, Super 8 kind of falls into it. Heck, you even have Cabin in the Woods that plays along with tropes just like the Cloverfield franchise has done, but would that fall into it? Does that mean that Bad Robot can't make anything dealing with monsters unless it's called Cloverfield? It's what worries me and makes me think that they used the title to sell the movie, or maybe they do have something up their sleeve. One thing is for sure, you can't call it a cash grab. Need for Speed, Gem of the Holograms, those are terrible movies that took franchise names, but they knew those movies were dookie. This movie is actually good. What you end up getting is a scenario where you buy The Godfather on Blu-ray, you open it up, and it's Goodfellas. Like, you're mad, but you're not fully mad because you still got a good movie. What it is like seeing a commercial for Lost, and then it says Highway, and you see that it's a bunch of people who are stranded in a highway, and the first season is great, but there really is no connections to the island or the characters, except 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42, being the coordinates and where they're lost. Part of me believes, considering that they're really into Half-Life and how they have companies who come together, that they may be dealing with alternate realities at a certain point. I mean, these guys made Lost and Fringe. We know that they want to expand the Cloververse, and there is a project with Reeves in the works and Goddard in the works, that may be it, but a lot of people are speculating that it's going to be the movie God Particle. Maybe just like with the spec script for The Cellar, they'll add some extra elements to make it more Cloverfield-ish, but it's interesting to see that this is a movie that takes place in space, with satellites, with astronauts finding something that changes everything after messing with a particle accelerator, and even has the Earth disappearing. So maybe alternate realities may be the thing that connects everything together. However, by the end, I still believe that we got 2 solid installments, and with the most recent one, we're just struggling to find the connections, we're theorizing on the characters, but I feel that the biggest question it leaves us goes along with the tagline, monsters come in many forms. Sure, you had alien monsters on the outside, but within the bunker, you had creepier monsters. So who would you rather be stuck with? Thank you guys for watching this video, and a big shout out to my Patreon supporters who help out this channel on a monthly basis. As I said, this is a very expansive universe, and I hope that you guys are just as in love with the Cloverfield universe as I am, or hopefully you learned a little bit from this video. As I said in the beginning as well, I do have a Cloverfield prize to give away, which consists of the 3 limited edition IMAX posters from the film, a bottle of Swamp Pop as seen in the movie, and a copy of the first Cloverfield. All you have to do to enter is just help share this video around, get the message out to the love for Cloverfield out there, and down below in the comment section type my favorite Clover is, and then let me know your favorite character from both of the movies and why they are your favorite character. Also make sure to check out Roll Credits, the winner of this year's We Love the Oscars. She's an awesome YouTuber. Check her out and leave in the comment section, hey, the Cloverfield monster sent me. That'll really confuse her. Thank you guys for watching. We can discuss more about Cloverfield down below in the comment section, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.